Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity, your recovery-focused podcast with your host, Keegan. What if the very spirits you were told to abandon in recovery were actually the key to your healing? What happens when a witch finds herself in a basement meeting being told her magic doesn't belong in sobriety? Today, we are joined by a force of nature in both the spiritual and recovery worlds, Sunshine Witchski, also known as the pink-haired sober witch. She is a psychic medium, a Reiki master, and a high priestess who realized that traditional recovery models were asking witches to leave their power at the door. She's the author of The Sober Witch Life and the visionary founder of the Sovereign Phoenix, a nonprofit religious fellowship dedicated to providing a recovery coven for those healing from addiction, trauma, and codependency. As a part of as a part of Podcast-thon, the world's largest charity podcast event, we're shining a spotlight on the Sovereign Phoenix's mission to ensure that no witch has to heal alone. Sunshine, welcome to the show, and let's talk about recovery, your story, and how recovery is an act of rebellion all in its own right.
I love that. Keegan, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's a whole bunch of questions. So recovery and, how it is an act of rebellion. What that makes me think of is all of these conversations that I've had with folks in recovery about how much drinking is celebrated.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? Like how it's accepted, how there's like a rite of passage when you go to college, or maybe you're not going to college, but you're still in that party scene.
Yep.
And for so many of us, I would imagine it never ends until you wake up one day with the worst hangover that you've ever had in your life, and you're going, I can't keep doing this. Right? I
Yeah.
can't keep doing this to myself. And I would love to say that that's all that it ever takes. But for anybody that's ever stepped into recovery, it's probably not one.
No.
It is probably, I don't know, maybe hundreds of them. Yeah, I've my own recovery journey. This is something I celebrated this past October 6 years
Woohoo.
in recovery from alcohol. But
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And in that whole week, because my birthday, I hit my rock bottom on my 40th birthday, and a couple of days after was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so that whole week is very reflective of me. And I realized this past October that I haven't been in recovery just since October of 2019. I've actually been in recovery since pretty much June of 2015, when I finally told my ex-husband I
Oh.
could no longer be married. Like,
Oof.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was emotional abuse in the marriage. And even when just last year, I had a Facebook memory pop up. And that Facebook memory was from 2014, right around the beginning of Lent, that said I was
Oof.
going to go 40 days without drinking. And I went,
Ooh.
oh shit. I thought I've had a problem with alcohol since back then. Like,
Uh-huh.
wow, look at how long it took me to like finally realize I was done with those hangovers, so to speak. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my recovery journey, I would think, really started when I stepped out of that abusive relationship with my ex-husband. And then almost 2 years after that, an abusive relationship with a former employer,
Ugh.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so that was in 2017. And then 2 more years it took me to finally realize. So, like, I've
Mm.
been on this journey of really trying to step into the best version of myself, the version that knows what happiness is and joy is, and,
Mm-hmm.
that loves peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? There's
Yeah.
somebody on either Facebook or Instagram lately, that's in recovery, and they said something along the lines of like, it's only when you step into recovery that you realize like what true peace is, because you understand how much of your life was in chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's for sure. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I gotta agree that recovery, it it's one of those things that is, a lot of people think that it's this big milestone all in its own right, but kind of like you just highlighted, is that it has a bunch of different facets to it. It's not just recovery from alcohol or recovery from other drugs and stuff like that. It can be that codependency factor. It can be even
Mm.
those bad behaviors that we want to stop doing to ourselves that don't involve other people or any other substances too, you know? So, I
Yeah.
mean, so was it because you were in recovery and you were kind of being told to not be you that made you start the sober witch recovery kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I've been a witch since I was 16. I was raised Catholic, and folks that have
Same.
ever stepped out of the Catholic faith might understand this. That especially if you go down the esoteric and witchy path, like basically Catholics are being taught to do ritual at a young age, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Like
Yep.
we just are.
Yep.
And so I was 16 when I started to dive into learning about witchcraft and really started down my occult path. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been a practicing witch and identified as a witch since I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
But I stepped into recovery originally in that 2019 around my alcohol abuse
Mm-hmm.
through the tables of a 12-step program.
Yeah.
And I was at the point that I was like, I do not know how to get out of this. Like this thing is wily, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
a gnarly beast that's got its claws into me, and I need to figure out what other people are doing that to get out of this. And so I committed to doing 90 meetings in 90 days. I sat
Mm.
down at these tables for 90 meetings in the course of 90 days.
Uh-huh.
And as the clouds started to lift and this like fog and the sorrow and the sadness and the resentment and the guilt and all of these things started to kind of like part ways and give me like glimpses into like hope. I started
Mm-hmm.
to realize one of the things that I had done for a good portion of my adult life was kind of abandon my spiritual beliefs.
Mm.
Right. I would dabble them. I did the practice, just like we were Catholics growing up. We were Catholics around the holidays,
Yeah.
right? We were Catholics, when you had to do
Communion or
your
whatever.
yes, that kind of stuff. Uh, I wasn't living a spiritual life. I just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. And so I remembered starting to kind of like sneak little sentiments in of my spiritual belief into the tables.
Mm-hmm.
In a very particular instance, I was sitting around a table, and somehow or another, the conversation for that topic that night was higher power.
Mm.
It gets to me, and I start talking higher powers, higher powers, higher powers. And somebody pulled me aside at the end of the meeting and said, "Hey, I just kind of wanted to like point something out that you kept saying like higher powers. I don't know if that was intentional or."
Oh
And I
no.
like, yeah. And so I was like,
Mm.
actually, it was. I said, I personally believe in a number of higher powers, like
Mm-hmm.
my ancestors and different deities and,
Mm-hmm.
goddesses. And they're just like glazed over. Like they had no clue how to respond to me in that moment whatsoever. And I knew at that point, as much as these tables helped to get me there,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't going to be what kept me in a long-term
Yeah.
path of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to take a look around, and I did, and I started to ask myself, what is it that these long timers have in common?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I saw was they all had a strong spiritual belief.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
had some kind of practice that they did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them it was going to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Others were volunteering. Others were, just talking about their prayers, right? And so I had to ask myself at that point, what is mine?
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. And I mean, that first of all, I gotta say, I wish I was there to see that reaction on that person's face because I've had to kind of do that thing myself, and I also gotta say, I'm as a witch myself. I'm also from the Catholic background, so it's just really funny, like there is a lot of ritual in Catholicism, and a lot of people are like, well, what? No, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. To each their own. But the spiritual practice is one of those things that is paramount in recovery, and I think that it's a shame that some people get shamed out of their personal practice. And I mean, I've kind of come to the belief that you can't shame someone into recovery. And that's what I know I try to do to myself. You know, it was like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I know better, and so on and so forth. But whenever it comes to a spiritual practice, it's hard to not kind of go with the flow. You know,
Yeah.
whenever other people are like, it's working for them. So why is yours quote unquote bad? So how do you kind of break that stigma, if you will?
Oh, that mine is, I think I have a little bit of an innate rebel. That's why I love that you said, recovery is a rebellion in its own self. Like I'm a little bit of I'll toss you the middle finger if I believe in something and you don't. Like I don't I just like I'm blessed in that regards.
Hmm.
I've not even, I said I was a practicing witch at the age of 16. And my family knew about it, and I was kind of a little bit of a joke. They thought it was just going to be this phase, so to
Hmm.
speak.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I'm 46. I came out, I was in high school when The Craft came out. Like every single one of us, watched the movie and decided we were going to be witches.
Light as a feather, stiff
Practice.
as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Yeah, I know. And so, I luck out that I didn't have to really, I don't think, fight that as much, right? I
Hmm.
felt pretty comfortable. Once I identified and truly felt like I'm a witch, like this is my path. Now the question became, how do I do this? What does that mean as a
Mm.
witch,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
What does that mean as a witch?
Hmm.
And I will tell you, part of the rebellion that I have too is the fact that I'm here screaming it from the rooftops right now, right? I've started a nonprofit because
Hmm.
there are so many of us that are out there. And Keegan, I want to point this out because I've realized this recently too. People will tell me, but there's a pagans in recovery.
Hmm.
And I said, not every witch is pagan,
Nope. Not every pagan is a witch either.
right?
Yep. Hmm.
So certainly fine. You want to do pagan in recovery, but I have a lot of Christian witches that actually work with me as well.
Ah, okay. That's cool. And that's one thing too, is that like I do know that Pagans in Recovery, I was part of that group for a good while, still am from here and there. You know, it's just one of those things that work was like, hey, you can't really do this in the morning anymore. And I was like, shit. But that was the thing too, is that I, being a pagan and a witch, it was one of the things I always thought was like, well, witches are pagan, right? But like you said, it's not necessarily the case. So you've created a space that's primarily for witches, no matter which walk they may come from. Because, I mean, witch is also more of the English term, right? Because you have like the brujas in Spanish culture, and I forget other names for witches across the board, but a witch is a witch, would you say?
Yeah, I would say so. And I get asked this question often. Excuse me. Like,
Okay.
what do I mean by that,
Uh
right?
huh.
So I think it's really valuable to kind of share my definition, like the philosophy behind
Yeah,
a
yeah.
witch.
Uh huh.
And so it's three pillars to me. One
Okay.
is the belief in the practice of the psychic arts, right? We
Hmm.
believe in our psychic gifts, that we have either visions or sight, or we can hear, like the belief in the practice of, in whatever
Hmm.
way, shape, or form that looks like. The
Okay.
second one is the belief in the practice of magic and ritual,
Hmm.
right? Spell work, prayers, mantras, affirmations. These are all spell work and ritual.
Hmm.
And the third pillar is the belief in the practice of the truth that we are here to be of service to the world.
Ooh, okay. I
And
love that.
that can be as simple as raising incredible little human beings, right? Being the
Hmm.
best mother and father or parents or grandparents or whatever it is that you possibly could be, or it
Hmm.
could be as big as grand as starting an entire movement,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is that calling is I believe that we are here to be. That is like what a lot of the witches did.
Hmm.
They were the medicine men and women of a community, of a tribe, of a right. They were
Hmm.
there, providing their services. They were healing their family members,
Hmm.
right? That to me is what makes up a witch. So I don't. It doesn't matter to me if you are pagan, Christian, Muslim, a Jewish, however it is, you whatever quote unquote deity that you want to work with is perfectly fine and acceptable. It is
Hmm.
those beliefs and practices that to me make you a witch.
Oof, I love that. It's a solid definition and one that I think more people would probably fall in line with if they were to look at themselves honestly, you know?
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of the silly thing too, because a lot of people will disregard things that they don't know about necessarily, or they may have that fear behind it too. And
Yeah.
so you created this safe space for people to go whenever they feel like there's a witch hunt, technically, right?
Yeah, that's the exact reason the nonprofit was started.
Mm.
I had this download that happened last year when the world started to take this really like drastic shift and turn, and
Mm-hmm.
you had a lot of this. The Christian nationalist movement came out, and there was some chastising. And I started
Mm-hmm.
to watch some of the people that were around me talk about these fears, of being a witch. Right? Again,
Mm-hmm.
I shout it from the rooftops, but I started to watch, and I went, "Oh my God!" I said, "My practice is so tied to my recovery. What would happen if somebody came after my practice?
Oof. Oh, that's a good question.
What would happen to my recovery?"
Yeah, yeah. If you take out the foundation of your recovery, then a relapse is imminent, really.
Yep. So that is the entire belief behind and the reason why the Sovereign Phoenix was created.
Okay. And if, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's actually legally recognized as a religious nonprofit, correct?
We are legally recognized, so we formatted in the state of Michigan last October on October 20th. I filed all the paperwork, and then you have to like, and I don't know that people know this, in order to like get your IRS like recognized by the IRS, which is the final recognition,
Mm-hmm.
you have to raise like $600, right? Like it's wild to say that as a nonprofit.
Uh-huh.
You have to raise just to file the paperwork. So we finally
Hmm.
raise that amount. I filed the paperwork the beginning of February,
Oh, wow.
and 3 weeks I had the letter back in our mailbox.
Oh, wow.
So now the IRS literally recognizes us. We have everything kind of like dotted lines, T's crossed, I's dotted,
Uh-huh.
stating we are a legally recognized religious nonprofit
Huh.
incorporated in the state of Michigan and recognized by the federal government.
That's really cool.
Hmm.
Like, I just gotta say kudos because that is some big work, and I feel that this is a big movement that's going to catch on, and I really hope it does. And that's why, I mean, it's so cool because witches are making a comeback in a sense, right? Like,
I to me they've always been there,
mm-hmm,
right? But I think what's happening right now, Keegan, is that people are starting to wake up and realize that all of the fear that's been applied to them
mm-hmm,
has been in order to control.
mm-hmm,
And so they're tired of being controlled. They're tired of feeling like they can't be who they are. I don't even know. I haven't looked at the stats around addiction. So I don't like to quote unless I've looked at them recently. But
mm-hmm.
last year I looked at them. But it's something like 30% of all Americans are impacted by addiction, and that's just on a survey that they state.
Uh-huh.
Let alone if we start talking about folks actually being, and that's usually substance use disorder,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
let alone when we start talking about how addiction shows up in all the other ways,
Mm-hmm.
through sugar, through food, through sex,
Mm-hmm.
gambling.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think people are tired of being controlled, and addiction is one of the ways that the low vibrations of the world like to control us.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, 30% is a big number, and it's a scary number too, you know. Uh, I I want to say that I feel like that number is actually higher, but are you saying that whenever you looked at those stats, was it just the people that were like directly affected, the people that were impacted by addiction itself?
Yeah, if I remember, it was substance use specifically, and
Okay.
like currently indicating like afflicted.
Mm, gotcha. Okay. Because I know in my recovery work, it's been pretty much that, especially did traditional step work like 8 and 9 is like, oh, hey, like my addiction has impacted a lot more people than just myself, And it's one of those things that I think a lot of people know what addiction is and why there's that stigma behind it. You don't want to be like so and so that's drinking too much. You don't want to be like so and so that's gambling all their money away. But it can be really hard whenever you have this fear about just showing up as you are, right?
I don't know that people realize how much addiction is impacting their lives, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what I mean by this is like, you and I as recovering alcoholics, it wasn't just our immediate family that was impacted. It was the people that we worked with. It was the people that we saw on a regular basis. It was the guy at the party store that knew what we were ordering before we came up to the counter, right?
Yep.
Like, it's the guy at the party store that wondered where you were when you didn't show up, right?
Yep, yep.
So many people are impacted by, a culture, and it's not just a legal substance. I even like to think right now, you've got all of these states, they've shown this drop in alcohol use, right? And I don't know that there have been statistics that have come out yet to show how the legalization of marijuana has impacted that drop and how many folks have shifted, right? I totally, I 100% support, harm reduction, right? So I know there's a lot of people that choose to smoke rather than drink.
Yep.
No issues with that.
Nope.
But again, if all you've done is transferred one addiction to another addiction and still aren't doing the work.
Yep. Yeah. It's no good. I know in my early recovery, I was actually drinking Red Bull like I was the alcohol. And let me tell you, that was still not good for anybody.
Yeah, the caffeine addiction. I had somebody recently ask me about kind of some of the stuff that was going on. And as a psychic, I did this read and I was like, what happened when you were like 24? I said, I'm like feeling like you started drinking espresso. How much espresso do you drink? And they're like, I have about 6 espressos a day. And I was like,
that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So like they themselves were concerned because they started to realize that they had started to drink wine at night. They didn't want to start to pick up a habit.
Ooh.
And they said they were drinking wine because they were having a hard time falling asleep, racing thoughts.
Yep, that balancing act.
And so that's what I was like, you just need to not drink so much caffeine. I was like, try that for 30 days. Tell me what you feel like then.
Yeah. And I mean, that's so hard to do for someone that doesn't realize that they're addicted to something. And like you said, addiction is a form of control. And we're not usually the ones that choose to fall into the addiction. The addiction really just grabs us and does whatever it wants to. And so is that why you called the Sovereign Phoenix, because you're regaining your control over yourself after you rise up from the ashes?
Yeah, I mean that's in essence the entire kind of premise behind it is to the reclaim who we truly are as human beings, right? Yes, we're all everybody in the Sovereign Phoenix is going to identify as a witch, but who we are, I work with so many folks right now and we're going through this deep 90 days of shadow work and just as I'm observing and I'm realizing I'm like there's so much self-abandonment. There's this, I wanted to do this, but I do this. I think this is what I truly believe, but other people feel this. And I'm just like, wow, right?
Yeah.
And we have, and I said this to them, I think probably last month at some point. I said, throughout our entire life, as children, we are taught, right? This is the reality for 18 years, or, we'll go 24 years, right? Till you're out of college. You're kind of given a prescription, told what it is that you should be doing, how you should be living your life. Nobody ever teaches you, though, how to live for yourself.
Nope. And that's kind of that scary word for me nowadays is should. Like you should do this. Like says who? Like the more I'm figuring this stuff out, I'm like, because society tells me to. Like the fuck does society's done not a lot of great things in the time that I'm able to look at history. It's like, and it's always the people that are trying to be themselves that seem to be stamped on.
My first year in recovery, so every year that I've been in recovery, I've created like a saying and a sticker. And my first year was "fuck the shoulds," right? Because
Yeah.
I was tired of it. What had gotten me into like so far and deep into my addiction was all of these people prescribing what I should be doing, how I
Mm-hmm.
should be living life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was I've literally by the age of 35 reached every mile marker that anybody would ever have outside of, I decided not to have children. Every other mile marker I hit.
Mm.
6-figure job, owned my own home, brand new car,
Huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Like everything. And then what? Then what? Right?
Yeah.
Like I checked off the list that
Mm.
somebody gave me.
Uh-huh.
All the things that I should do were done.
Yeah. And
And then what?
I mean, you could go on to be a billionaire and lose your soul.
Well, I mean, the even at that regards, like from the money perspective,
Mm-hmm.
there was no joy, there was no happiness. There was these masked moments of
Mm.
enjoyment,
Mm-hmm.
but I will not say that they were happy and joy filled.
Yeah, no fulfillment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that kind of where reparenting the soul comes into play? Because, I mean, we have to both work on the wounds that we have, but that is a big one is the shoulds. Like, you should go do this. You should go get your bachelor's. You should go to trade school. You should do this and all that. Or even you shouldn't act hyper. You shouldn't do
Yeah.
this. And I think the shouldn'ts are the ones that got me in a lot of trouble because it made me fit into a box and I'm still figuring who the fuck I am,
Yeah.
and it's hard.
It's so we went through, I said that these 90 days of shadow work, and the first month was fear, the second month was shame and guilt.
Mm,
And how I described it was shame and guilt are often things that were projected on you from others, which a lot of it comes from the shoulds and the
mm-hmm.
shouldn'ts,
Yeah,
right?
yep,
You should do this or you shouldn't do this, which then evokes guilt or shame,
yep.
right? And again, if you don't understand, if you are never taught or given the opportunity to discover who you truly are, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
your sovereign being is, it's hard to not respond to that, to
Yeah.
not feel the projection of whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we do have to. So, literally, we're going through this. We're like combing out all of these fears and shame and guilt. And this month, we're in self loathing, right? Because that's the other thing
Mm.
that we get into is this self loathing. And then the exciting part, though, because it sounds pretty deep and heavy, which it is, all of this work. But in April, we start the alchemy of desire.
Ooh.
Because if you have gone ahead and seen and explored all of that, you've looked in the mirror, you've seen all of this shadow. By the time we hit April, all of the individuals that have been along on this journey with me should have a better idea of who they are, what they truly want, and what they really desire in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is something that most people, I don't think that they spend an ounce of time or energy trying to define what that is.
Nope. I
Right?
completely agree with you. And it's scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're just operating like a wheel in the machine,
Mm-hmm.
and so you get a choice. You can do that, right? We can all
Mm-hmm.
do that. We could just do that until we hit the end of the line, and we punch our ticket out and we get ready to go on to wherever we're going to go to next. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
heaven if that's your belief. Maybe it's another lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
right? My personal belief is that's not how I want to go. I want
Yeah.
to understand, right? I say this to people. The universe wants us to live a life filled with joy and happiness and love and peace and good health. It wants all of these things for us.
Yeah.
As human beings, though, for some odd reason, we love to choose the hard way, the difficult way, the sad way, the way filled with a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So I just realized we had some people in the chat say they think they heard addiction affects 10 to 25 people other than themselves. And that sounds
Ooh.
like a pretty big number, and it
Yeah.
sounds about right. And I mean, it's kind of scary though, because if if the person that falls into addiction doesn't really know themselves, those 15 to 20 other people may not know themselves either, but they're okay with the person that is in addiction because they're like, oh, at least that's not me, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And
Or at least they are me,
oh, yeah.
right? I
Ooh,
mean,
yeah.
addicts love hanging out with other addicts, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And that's using or not using, right? So if you know
Mm-hmm.
somebody in recovery, you love hanging out with other people in recovery. You are
Mm-hmm.
still in active addiction, you love hanging out with people in active addiction,
Yeah. And
right?
yeah, it's who was it that I either spoke to or I watched another interview with, but it was a hypnotherapist, and they were talking about how some people are just like a blank shell. And they like there's nothing going on in there, and or like past stuff. And I was like, that's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about that. Like people are just blank on the inside, and I mean, to me, it also kind of makes some sense because I think some people are okay with the just checking everything off the box and then dying without having any sense of self.
Yeah, so I have a client that asked me once about, again, as a psychic, sometimes people like to ask you the weird, like the difficult questions.
Yeah.
And so this one particular client asked me, and I think about this all the time. They're like, okay, well, what's the meaning of life?
Oh,
And I told them, I said, you don't want to ask me that. And they're like, why? I said, because my answer is going to piss you off. Right? And they're like, well, no, I really want to know. I was like, are you sure you want to know?
yeah.
Right?
Uh
Yes,
huh.
I want to know. I said, it's to live it.
Yeah. And oof. Yeah.
Right? So if all you're doing is checking a box, are you really living your life?
Mm-mm.
Right? If you're always doing what other people are telling you to do, whose
Mm-hmm.
life are you really living?
Not yours.
Not yours.
And
Right?
uh huh.
So we can check out and I think there's a time that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you think about, if we go into the magical order of things, people become an initiate. And as you're an
Mm-hmm.
initiate, or we're going to go down the trade path, or we're going to say you're an apprentice,
Mm-hmm.
you are there to learn, absorb, and to do as you are told to do. But
Yep.
at some point in everyone's career, magical career, or literal, like, trade career,
Mm-hmm.
you have to stop being the apprentice or the initiate
Mm-hmm.
and take the responsibility to start doing things on your own,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And that to me, like this is what happens when people are stepping into like the sovereign phoenix, right?
Mm.
This is what happens when people are stepping into recovery in general.
Yeah.
Is they're literally making the decision in their life, whatever they're recovering from, again, substance, trauma, codependency, self-abandonment,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have a handful of folks in my circle that are came out of cults, like were raised in some of the really
Oof.
well-known Christian cults in
Mm.
the country.
Uh-huh.
They have their own form of recovery. And so when you make that decision, you are now taking, like, you basically say to the universe, all right, I'm here. I'm going to take full accountability of my life from this point forward. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
happens is my responsibility, right? And
Yep.
the reason why the spiritual path becomes so important in recovery is because what you do is you say, I'm here to do the work. Just let me know which way to go.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And they're doing the next right thing, you know?
The next right thing. Yep.
And I mean, I think you hit a really good spot with that whole responsibility aspect because having been an apprentice electrician, I never went further because one, I broke my femur in my first year, and so I never actually got my full hours to do the journeyman stuff, but also the addiction just wouldn't let me do it. But a lot of people that I knew that had been in the trade for a long time, they chose to not be a journeyman of their own because they didn't want that responsibility of a job site. They didn't want the responsibility of this, that, or another. And then they were also whining about why they weren't getting paid more. And and that's kind of the same thing with recovery. It is responsibility onto ourselves for our actions and behaviors. And addiction is kind of that excuse of going like, I don't have to look at that though, you know?
Yeah.
And we sit there and wonder why our lives aren't better, why we're always miserable, why this, that, and another. And like recovery is not necessarily easy, do you think? I think there's hard parts to it, but I think that once you get the flow of it, it's kind of easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I would say we make it as difficult as we want to make it.
Ooh. Oh,
Okay?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, I go back to what I was saying. Us human beings, we're like weird. We are such masochists. It's gross sometimes,
Yeah.
right? We're
Uh-huh.
like, I'm gonna make this the hardest thing I've ever done, and I gotta do all of this, and it's like the only thing that I have to, like, the one absolute in my recovery is to not pick up a drink. That is the one absolute.
Yep.
Okay. Now, every day that goes by, it's easier and easier. The challenging aspect of this is all of the things that come up
That make
after
you
I
wanna
make the after I make that choice that try to convince me it was the wrong choice. Right?
Yep.
That's where the difficult time. But again, I could go ahead and if I learn the right tools, it becomes easy. It's like putting, oil, an oil slick on you. It just rubs right off of you. And the more tools that you have, the more tools that you get, doesn't matter what you throw my way. Throw a bowling ball my way. Throw a watermelon. You could throw a hot potato. I'm going to know and understand how to not hold on to it so that it doesn't impact my recovery.
Yeah.
So it's difficult because we have to learn new behaviors. We have to have new tools. But again, it'll only be as difficult as you choose to make it. If you are resistant to change, if you are resistant to new things, if you are resistant to letting things go, right? It'll be really difficult for you.
Yeah.
It'll
And
be like Mount Everest difficult.
yeah. I love the way that you put that because it really kind of highlights the willingness to recover or having the gift of desperation, as I've heard it be called, and have to agree. Real quick, before we get too much further, where can people find you and the Sovereign Phoenix?
Well, you can always visit the website, thesovereignphoenix.com, but I like to also share that I'm creating a movement with this too. So you can visit soberwitch.life as well. So the soberphoenix.com is the nonprofit. And if you look up Sober Witch Life anywhere on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you name it, you will find me in the movement.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And someone has a question, or rather a comment, and they said a lot of people find it really hard to find self due to having to confront everything they don't like. So you kind of have talked about shadow work, but you also have 13 steps as opposed to the traditional 12 steps. And is shadow work part of those 13, right?
Yeah. When we get into so there's actually I've got a new recovery grimoire that comes out next 2 weeks from now, actually. I was gonna say next month, but we're already in March. And I do share the comparison between the original steps, 12 steps, and mine. And so instead of taking that moral inventory in step 4, you start to do the shadow work. You start to reflect upon the things that have been the challenges, and then same thing, in that tail end of needing to, I think it's 10, continuing to do a regular daily moral, and it's the same thing doing that shadow work. And it's like, here's the thing, you may not like something, that's cool, but why? What is it? Why don't you like it? That's where the shadow work comes in. And here's the reality. It might be okay that you don't like it. There might be nothing wrong with you not liking it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's not who you are,
Uh,
right? Like some people just don't like working a 9 to 5. Okay, cool.
mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you only want to work, maybe you only really like working part-time. All right, well
Mm-hmm.
now you've got to figure out how to create a life around that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
when you know and understand the things that you do desire, the things that you do like, the things that make you that fire you up, that make you comfortable, when you are honest with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to identify the life that you truly desire. It's
Mm-hmm.
when we get caught up in all of these lies and falsehoods and those shoulds and the projections of other people,
Mm-hmm.
right? When
Yeah.
we don't take the time to be honest, that's where we get caught up in the what about the things that I don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, that's one of those hard things though, because having to be honest with everyone, including myself, is hard because whenever I was growing up, I was that people pleaser, because I had to make mom and dad happy to make sure that I got love and acceptance in the household. And so
Yeah.
that followed me into adulthood and that bit me in the ass really hard. And so trying to be honest and tell people no sometimes is a hard thing to do. And like not even
Yep.
having to explain myself either.
Recovering people pleaser. Yeah, I think there's a lot of us that are.
Mm,
And it's very, very common. It's been more common with women that I've talked to in recovery
mm-hmm.
than it has for a lot of men. A lot of men get this opposite like piece of like this dominant masculinity where they feel like they have to be macho when they don't want to be, right? So it's
Yeah.
a weird thing.
Mm-mm.
But you know, this is again, I think why a lot of people don't understand or know what they like because they've spent so many years just saying yes. And it's so uncomfortable to say no. Like, again, I go back to what I said. You'll make it as difficult as you want to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are going to avoid discomfort, recovery is going to be really tough for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really, really tough because no is a very uncomfortable thing, and it is probably the most powerful tool you will ever learn to use in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I 100% agree because if I still had those people pleasing aspects kicking my ass, anytime someone handed me a drink for whatever reason, it'd be like, I have to now. Fuck. And that's not what I want to do. And so, yeah, no is the most powerful tool that I've learned. And you're right. It felt really selfish at first. Does that make sense? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm doing everything wrong. I'm doing the things I'm not supposed to be doing. And no, it's actually been one of the most liberating things. And
It feels selfish because a lot of times we have the people around us that are really good at hitting our shame and guilt triggers,
mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
right? So they know how to push the button. We say no, no, sorry, I don't want that drink. Oh, well, come on. But you
Mm-hmm.
always drink with me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make me drink alone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's right. I've got the gun to your head, right?
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right, cool.
Yep. And I love that you said that too, because it goes back to that rebellious aspect, because I've come to find out that even if someone had a gun to my head, it's like, no, I'm going to be a rebel enough to say like, okay, go ahead and shoot. And like, if I'm not doing what you want me to do, fuck you.
Yeah, no, it's such a hard one, and it makes me sad because there are a lot of people, and again, I go, and I think it's because I think a lot of parents fall into this mix where they start to feel as though they always have to bend to the will
Mm,
of the family, the will of the children, the will of the husband, the will of the wife, like whatever that may be.
mm-hmm.
And I would imagine, I would love to peek into the world that if in college people were taught sovereignty, what it
Mm.
would do for our divorce rates,
Oof. Oh, that would be
right?
an interesting one. Huh.
Right?
Yeah, like peek on over into a parallel timeline and just be like, hey, what if y'all learned this in college instead of the party culture?
Yeah, like what if everybody was taught how to be sovereign, how to understand who they were, what they desired in life? What would our divorce rates look like? Because
Mm-hmm.
you would never marry because you should,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
right?
Yep.
You wouldn't marry someone because I don't know what they did for you and you thought you needed to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I don't know, that's a very
Yeah.
fascinating question there.
Yeah. Real quick, how can people support the Recovery Coven if they're looking to help out? Since this is a podcast on episode.
You can always head over to the sovereignphoenix.com website and you can make a donation. You
Okay.
know, as a nonprofit, anything that is donated, right? Obviously, talk to your tax accountant, but if you itemize, you can write off your any donation, any size, right?
Uh-huh.
Including folks that are like members. If you decide to join and become a member and join us in the coven, your membership is tax deductible with the
Ooh.
advice and guidance of your CPA. Right? You know,
Uh-huh.
gotta throw that one in all the time. But the cool part is too, we've also been looking for some volunteers lately for outreach.
Okay.
The biggest thing that I have realized is right now I'm one person.
Mm-hmm.
There are, you know, a couple of other people that are in the nonprofit's operations, and we are still a small team.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more people that are willing to reach out and share with metaphysical stores, bookstores, spiritual centers, other recovery organizations, other mental health organizations, wherever it may be, we've had a huge response from therapists.
Ooh.
Therapists have asked for our information so that when they have their patients,
Mm-hmm.
right, and they are looking for an alternative, that they have a place for them to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we are looking for volunteers that are able and willing to help join our outreach efforts.
Mm.
And anybody that chooses to volunteer is welcomed into the coven at no cost.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I mean, that's some big work if therapists are reaching out to y'all ahead of time. You know, that means the word's already getting out and it's going to be more powerful than you can ever imagine. And what is that saying in recovery? Uh, your higher powers can't be limited by your lack of imagination or something like that.
Sounds about right. Yeah, sounds about right.
It's like you never try to put them in a box and or what they can and maybe won't do for you. Because I know there's been many times where sometimes what I wished that something would have happened. It was like, oh, it's a blessing that it didn't happen because I was totally not ready for that.
Yeah, the universe is always conspiring in our favor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a bad thing, or I mean, and who was it that I spoke to? I can't remember at this point, off the top of my head, but they said that we assign meaning to the things that happen. You know, there's not really a bad thing, but if we want to treat it as a bad thing, then it's a bad thing. But all in all, I have to agree that somehow, one way or another, the universe has always got our backs, even if we're going to be kicking and screaming the whole way through.
Again, I go back to the we as human beings. We're lovely, lovely little masochists. You know, we
Uh-huh.
love the difficult ways. I
Yep.
often say to people, if you want an easier life, choose the easier path, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
then, I mean, that falls into like maybe the shoulda, coulda, wouldas and like doing what other people tell you to do.
Yes,
Because,
it does.
yeah, figuring our, and if we are a part of the universe, no, sorry, if we are a part of the universe and we are a mini universe and within our own selves, you know, as above, so below, then
Yep.
we're never really going to fully understand the universe. So, do you think that some people are really going to fully understand themselves either?
That's a really good conundrum of a question there. You know, I think we go back to the mysteries of life on that one. You know, and it's not. It reminds me of. I'll share this. I had a client yesterday that I had a past life reading with, and they wanted to know what they didn't know, right?
Oof.
What lesson in their life they needed to be, you know, aware of. And
Uh-huh.
what came through yesterday was when we seek to know, and I don't remember exactly what I told her, but when we have this desire and this seeking to know it all,
Mm-hmm.
that is a form of, then we're trying to control it all,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
ow. Oh.
And so, you know, you ask the question of like, does this mean that we may not know ourselves? That that implies like this, there's a finite of knowing, like that
Mm.
we must know at
Mm-hmm.
like, that the end, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
that it's possible. And I go back to even what I had said, like the point in life is to live it.
Mm-hmm.
So if every single day I know a little bit more about myself, I understand how I evolve, how I'm changing, how I'm shifting, how I'm moving,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would imagine that in the exact same way that like I'm a voracious learner, Today my partner and I were learning about the whirling dervishes. Fascinating. Look them up, right? Sufis, it's amazing. The history behind it, it's amazing,
Uh-huh.
right? The day I don't have anything else to learn about the universe or myself is the day again, once again, that I have now got my ticket and I'm ready to go.
Mm. I love that. It, we're always changing. We're always working. I've come to the understanding and belief that with each breath I take, I am different. Even if it's
Mm.
just by the sheer chemistry in my body and blood, I am different. And that makes me think different. And that makes me act different. So on and so forth. And I am who I think. And that's the weird part, too, because I know I had a lot of self limiting beliefs and putting myself in that small little bottle of like, I don't deserve this, I can't do
Ugh.
that, so on and so forth. And figuring out the opposite has been quite the journey, too, And that same person also that left a comment earlier said something also about being a people pleaser. You're more likely to give your energy when your battery is already empty,
Mm.
sort of speak, trying to pour water out of an empty glass. So, how do you help people kind of not do that in recovery? Because sometimes we can overextend ourselves in recovery too.
Yeah, I think that's you have to learn. So I have a
Mm.
mentor that I've worked with that helps teach people how to expand their capacity to be in situations. And I think
Uh,
in the beginning of recovery, and the reason why I share this is in the beginning of recovery, you've got to be like what most people would say is very, very selfish. Like you've got to go back to like the 3-year-old version of yourself where your world is very small,
mm-hmm.
right? And you're
Yeah.
only willing to give maybe to a handful of folks. And
Mm-hmm.
over the course of time, as you kind of like fill in your toolbox back up, right? You're going to be able to expand your capacity to be able to do more, right?
Mm.
And you're going to continue to kind of learn what that looks like. And you're going to go, "Oh shit, I just overextended myself again. I should have said no," right? We'll give away. It would have been in my better interest to have said no,
Yeah.
right? I've
Mm-hmm.
learned, right? What is it that would have helped me understand that? And so we begin to learn. It's literally like kind of I've never said it before, but going back to your 3-year-old self, right? We start to have more of our own independence at the age of 3 years old. We
Mm-hmm.
start to like we learn what no means. Go You want to know what no means? Go talk to a 3-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Go talk. So we become our 3-year-old self again,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to learn how to extend that capacity to the point that you are. And then at some point it may shift and change again,
Mm.
right? But that's
Yeah.
that's part of the whole learning and growing and knowing and understanding. And you know, again, having a good way not just to fill your cup but to protect the energetic. This is a lot of what I teach, especially as witches. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even a matter of always just giving. Sometimes people will just take the energetic,
Oof.
right? That's the reality of it. There
Yeah.
are energy vampires that are out there. There are people that
Mm-hmm.
don't realize they're doing it. And
Yep.
so it's important to be taught and to learn how to protect your own energetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to have good boundaries, both that are, energetic boundaries, but also your own personal boundaries. And over
Mm-hmm.
the course of time, you'll learn how to be able to give so that you don't deplete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that because I mean, I think that's one of those reminders that I need often is that I'm always growing and also at the same time I need to make sure I have a little bit for myself because like you said, I found that I was trying to pour from like nothing at one point and I kept asking for more and so it was like, hey, I couldn't I was asking for more so that I could help more people. But I found out that I needed to ask for a bigger cup so I could pour
Mm.
more. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And
Expanding that capacity. Yeah.
yep.
Sure
And
does.
And sometimes I feel like I'm not doing the best, but like you said, I have to go back to that 3-year-old version of me that got all these wounds that have been neglected for so long. I can't fix them all in just 2 days or 3 weeks or even 2 years. It takes a lot of work. And I may make a lot of headway in some regards, but sometimes it's, what is it? Like you can only work on so many things at one time. And so you can't fix all of them at once.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I have a couple of young folks in recovery. When I say young folk, they don't have a lot of time in recovery, and they've,
Hmm.
I've heard some sentiments of like, beating themselves up and feeling like they should be farther along, and I mean, they're doing so good for where they're at. They are
Hmm.
so incredible, and trying to help them realize that what you just said is like, this is, I don't know about you, but I started drinking at the age of 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I spent 32 years
Hmm.
drinking,
Yeah.
right? I
Oof.
spent, I was probably actively binging starting at the age of at least 15. So we're
Yeesh.
still talking about, what, 30 years, what, not, yeah, like
20 something.
25 years,
Uh-huh.
20 something years of like very aggressive addiction of
Yeah.
alcohol. How
Mm-mm. Yeah.
it's going to take a long time to undo
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
things that I have like buried, right,
Yeah.
through
Uh-huh.
that alcohol. I'm still maybe 6.5 years in now, and I'm very blessed and very grateful for the time. But I'm still uncovering things and
Mm-hmm.
doing the work. Still doing
Yeah.
the work every single day.
Yeah. And I mean, holy cow, that's a long journey. I know my drinking, I think it really started at 15 is whenever I first got drunk. And then I definitely had some first alcoholic drinks younger than that, but not like to get drunk. It was like, being in Texas, like, hey, you can have some of this margarita. Like, woohoo! Well, that was a bad idea, mom and dad. But just that is, we have to allow ourselves that grace and compassion to
Yeah,
mess up a little bit in recovery and to just work on ourselves as we can. So thank you for sharing all that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We are near the end of this episode. So, real quick, do you think that we could see you on in the future to dive into more recovery talk and how magic and all of that actually go hand in hand?
Oh, absolutely. You can have me back at any time. It was
Awesome.
an absolute pleasure.
Sweet. Thank you. I do have one last question if you don't mind, though. Okay, so Sunshine, the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity, and we explore how all facets of living life impact mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your life, what does retrieving sanity personally mean to you today, and what's one practice or perspective you believe is crucial for anyone on that journey?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask that wording for. I don't believe, sanity. I say people say that I'm crazy all the time.
Uh,
Being a psychic, it's a very,
Subjective.
yeah, it's a very crazy world. I would say retrieving sanity is, finding peace within your own mind.
Mm,
I think
yeah.
that's probably the easiest way for me to say that. And if I had to give, one kind of tip, advice, or guidance as to like how you might do that, how somebody might go down that path. Find out what you truly want your life to be like, and go after it voraciously.
Mm,
Yeah.
oof. I love that. I love both of those. Make peace within yourself and then find what you want and go after it. And hunt it if you must. So,
Nobody else is
uh,
gonna do it for you.
nope. Nuh-uh. No one can do recovery for you. It's all on you. So other people might push you to addiction, but some people can help you out. But it's a weird dichotomy in that aspect.
This is what I say. So when we close prayer in
Hmm.
circle, I thank the gods, the goddesses, all the ancestors, the angels, the elementals, the ascended masters, and any etheric being for surrounding, guiding, and protecting us. We know that it is our own individual responsibilities to take the actions that we need to in our recovery journeys. But by golly, are we grateful for the guidance and protection along the way?
Yeah. Oof. That's powerful. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, that's the perfect way to end this episode. So, and that's powerful ways to enter meetings too. So thank you. And
Yes.
with that being said, everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. And as always, this has been Keegan, this has been Sunshine, and we'll catch y'all in the next episode. But until then, try to love yourself, love others if you can, but you got to love yourself first. Dial 988 if you're having a mental health crisis, or you can text 741-741, and we will see y'all next time. But until then, much love. Schlan.